7th of February, Sunday, 2021. So let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 1000, 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006, 1007, 1008, 1009, 1010, 1011, 1012, 1013, 1014, 1015, 1016, trillion, trillion, 1 trillion, 2. I'm just kidding, I didn't count that much. But anyway, what I'm trying to, imply is that no matter where you reach, no matter how much you count, your counting, your position is going to be the subject of finitude. You are never going to reach that point we call infinity. Because that point at infinity does not exist. That thing we call infinity does not exist. That is the whole definition of infinity, or at least that is what it implies. Infinity captures our idea or the notion that we can say go forever. So this going forever notion is what infinity is about. So when you say does infinity exist, then of course it exists, because as you see in counting numbers, you can go forever, or at least seems to exist. If we can count forever and are not limited by our biology and our limited existence, then principally we can count forever, right? But the idea of counting forever does exist, right? Maybe it is just an illusion. But whatever exists, how can it be an illusion? Anything that exists is real. That does not have to be physically necessarily real, but it is real in the sense that this idea does exist. So, does infinity exist? Or does it not? Initially we said that it does exist. And before that, we said that it does not exist. That sounds like contradiction, or rather contradictions. Well, not just about the existence, non-existence of infinity, but also before initially. The notion that something is before something initially. But we'll talk of this latter contradiction later. For now, let's talk infinity. Let's look at this microscopically, or rather, ultra microscopically. Infinity is something that is the greatest, the biggest. Damn, that's not even a number. That is, it cannot be expressed by a number, by any number. So it is beyond the space of numbers. It is beyond numbers. And numbers, no matter what, being finite and is subject to finitude, is an element of the set called finiteness. That is, it is a point that belongs to this space that is finite. That is called finiteness. And this point called infinity, or the point at infinity, is a point that is always beyond this space. That is beyond this space. Now, by the definition of infinity itself, it is impossible to reach. It is impossible to get to. It is beyond everything. So if you really see, it can never be observed. It is not a subject of observation. It is not a subject of experience. It cannot be experienced because it is beyond everything. And if you really see, what is beyond everything? What is quote unquote beyond everything? It's nothing. Or rather, quote unquote, nothing. So, infinity is beyond everything. Nothing is beyond everything. Infinity is nothing. Or at least, component of nothing. One of the nothingness. Among that which belongs to nothing. Among that which nothing is. Among those that nothing is. So if you see, infinity cannot be reached. In other words, you could say it does not exist. It is something that is beyond the space of everything, that is beyond the space of being, that is beyond the space of existence, that is beyond the space of experience, that is beyond the space of observation. So in that sense, it does not exist for us. It does not exist for the being that exists in the space of existence, in the space of everything. It does not exist for the point that belongs to the space of existence. It does not exist for the entity that is within the space of entities of experience. So this point or state called infinity does not exist. It is the point or state of non-existence. It is a point or a state of nothing. That is why it can never be reached. That is why it can never be gotten to. That is why it can never be observed. That is why it can never be brought into existence or experience. A state of non-existence or nothing is a state that is not the state of everything, of experience. The state of nothing is a quote-unquote not of a state of something. This state of nothing is quote-unquote not of a state or a statement of something, of experience of something. So by the definition of infinity, it cannot be reached, it cannot be experienced, it cannot be observed, as by its definition, it is at infinity. So by the definition of infinity, it does not exist, because it is literally the quote-unquote not of quote-unquote everything, or quote-unquote existence. That is to say, infinity by its definition is quote-unquote not of quote-unquote existence. Therefore, infinity does not exist, since it is non-existence. So it is quite clear that if we make a move towards infinity, we will never get there. Or in other words, we will get there at infinity. So we will get there when we get there, and we will never get there, because it is non-existence. It is quote-unquote never getting there. It is not there. It is not a thing, remember? It is quote-unquote not of quote-unquote thing. So it does not exist for something. So to reach there is to say state A is state B. It is to say state something is a state nothing. It is something like saying something is nothing, but something defined as quote unquote not of quote unquote nothing is not nothing. So you see the point. So when you say when going towards nothing, and when you ask when will we reach towards this nothing or infinity, the answer is never. That is not ever. And that is what infinity is, not ever or nothing. So being in the space of everything or evers, you cannot get to infinity because it is not ever. It is beyond this space. It is not ever to be belonged to belong to this space of evers. So to reach it is to state that it belongs to the space of evers. It is to say that it is not never, but it is ever. It is to say that this never is a point called ever that belongs to the space of evers, which given the definition is not true. Also, when we make a move towards this infinity, we never get any closer. Why is that? That is because of the following. Now, when we say getting closer, what do we mean by that? Getting closer can be translated as saying what percentage of transition or transformation from one point to another point has been completed. What percentage of transformation of one state to another state has been completed. Now in this context, that means what percentage of never to ever or nothing to something has been completed. In other words, what percentage of never has become ever, or nothing has become something, or infinity has become definity or finity. And that, no matter what the answer, including 0 or maybe excluding 0 or 0%, that would not be true given the definition or provided the definition as we say it. So no progress is being made when we go towards infinity. So going towards infinity, we will never reach there. Not even that, we will not even make a progress. We will make no transformation. We will make no move towards infinity. We cannot make no move towards infinity given the definitions or definition. So even making move is making no move at all. In case you didn't get that right, even making move towards infinity is making no move at all towards infinity. So if you see, we are making move towards infinity even if we are not. So rejecting in. So we see that trying to get to infinity is not trying at all. Making a move towards infinity is not making a move towards it at all, because it is a move towards nothing. Here we are making a move from something to nothing, and that is not making a move as well. Now this also means that we can make a move towards infinity forever. We can move towards infinity forever. And yes, never get there. But nonetheless, we can make a move towards infinity forever. We can make a move forever. We can move forever. So there exists, quote unquote, forever move towards infinity. At least the idea exists. At least as ideas. So infinity exists. Take a look at this differently, a bit differently as well. If you see, infinity exists as well, but where? And the answer is at infinity, because infinity is infinity and it exists at itself or as itself. Now infinity exists. It exists at infinity. This is same as saying it does not exist. It is no different than saying it does not exist. So infinity does not exist. So infinity exists at infinity. That is, it does not exist. So infinity does not exist. That is, it exists at infinity. Now consider this. Consider statement 1. Beginning is at infinity. This is statement 1. Now consider statement 2. Now consider this. Consider statement 1 that states, quote unquote, beginning is at infinity. Now consider the second statement, statement 2 that states, quote unquote, infinity is infinity, that is, infinity is at infinity. Now consider statement 3, which states, quote unquote, there is no infinity. There is no at infinity. So you see, statement 2 and statement 3 are the same. Or at least, let's say they are equal. Or at least say that they are the same statements. Or they are equal. So now we have a fourth statement, statement 4, that states, quote unquote, statement 2 and statement 3 are equal or the same. But for convenience, let's just use the 3 statements and let's take statement 4 for granted and to be true. Also, statement 4 is what we discussed a lot initially. So we have 3 statements, one stating, quote unquote, beginning is at infinity. Second statement states, quote unquote, infinity is infinity, infinity is at infinity. Statement 3 states, quote unquote, there is no infinity, there is no at infinity. Now statement 2 and 3 are same, they are equal. So considering statement 1 and statement 3 or 2, we get the statement that states, quote unquote, there is no beginning. Now let's consider an argument that involves infinity, the universe, and the beginning of the universe. The argument is something like this. If the universe has no beginning, then the events go all the way back to infinity from the event that we generally refer to as now. Also, there are infinite events from now to all the way back to infinity. Now, because it takes infinite amount of time through infinite events to get to the event at infinity, so it becomes impossible to get from that infinity to the event we generally refer to as the now. So, just like in dominoes, that is, in case of infinite dominoes, it would take infinity, that is forever, to get to now from that infinity. But then now cannot come to be. That is, the event called now cannot come into being, but then now exists. So it cannot be the case that universe goes all the way back to infinity. Now I'll argue that there are problems in this argument. So let's look at this argument with intricacy. So first, I'd like to point out that with beginning at infinity, that is, with no beginning, it does not have to be that there are infinite events between now and the beginning at infinity. With the beginning at infinity, that is, with no beginning, it may be the case that the first event, that is the beginning, and the second event are infinitely separated. It may be the case that the beginning and now or the beginning and, let's say, the second event may be at infinity with respect to each other. So consider, for example, the beginning event and the event that is in second, or the second event. Let's say that. Let's call the beginning event event B, and let's call the second event event C. Now if B is defined to be the beginning, that is B equals beginning, and if this B is at infinity with respect to C, then that means the beginning is at infinity with respect to C, and the separation between B and C is infinite. So let's say this C is now and B is beginning, which is at infinity. So there is no beginning, because beginning is at infinity, or B is at infinity and B equals to beginning. So there is no B and there is no beginning, therefore. But now if you define beginning as not B but as an event that is the first event, or that defines the first event, then even if B is at infinity, this does not mean that beginning is at infinity, and therefore this does not mean that the beginning is not there. That is, this does not mean that beginning does not exist, or that there is no beginning. So B is B and beginning is the first event. Now if this first event is B or is equal to B, then again, since B is at infinity, this first event is at infinity, and therefore beginning is at infinity. That means there is no beginning. But if this beginning or the first event is not B, is not equal to B, or is not necessarily B, then because B does not exist with respect to C or now, so then because C is at infinity with respect to now and C is not at infinity with respect to now, then C is the beginning or the first event, and with now equals to C, now is the beginning event or the first event, and also there is nothing beyond C. Now let's say that event B, which is the beginning, and event C or now are not at infinity with respect to each other and are at infinity with respect to each other, then B is the first event and therefore B is the beginning. Now one thing that is taken for granted here is that the so-called beginning state or beginning event must be the experience of the beginning. That is, the beginning state must experience itself as the beginning event or beginning state. It must provide the experience of beginning. That is, it must provide the experience of the first event as it is defined to be. Now consider state or event B, and let this be the beginning state or event. That is, state B or event B is equal to the beginning state or event. Also, there is state or event C, but now it is not the second state or event after state or event B. There is also the event or state called now. Let us denote this by N. Now, let C and B be infinitely separated, and let N and C be finitely separated. It may also be the case that N equals to C. Now let the states or events be equally separated from each other. Now with this, it is clear that state or event C and state N are not the second state or event after event or state B. Also, there are infinite states or events between C and B. Now, since B is the beginning and is at infinity with respect to C and with respect to now, the beginning does not exist. So the beginning B does not exist with respect to now, and or with respect to C. Now, provided that now or n exists, and provided that B or beginning is at infinity, B with respect to now or n does not exist. Now B slash beginning is at infinity with respect to now slash n, and with respect to C, it does not exist with respect to n and C. Also, when I said earlier that events are equally separated, what I meant is that the adjacent events are equally separated. Now, provided that now slash n exists, and what we mean by its existence is that it is finitely separated or close with respect to the event with respect to which now exists, or with respect to which it exists. Now it can also be said that for any observer, now is not just finitely close or finitely separated, but it is infinitely close. As the observer, and by the definition of now and the observer is at now and observer is now. But it can also be the case that the event of interest is not the now event or the observer event or the observer's event, but some other event. But anyway, if now exists with respect to or for some event, then now and that event are finitely separated. That is, not infinitely separated. And this event of interest can be event C, for which n slash now exists, as they are finitely separated. In the argument that is made against the universe in which there are infinite events all the way back, the author or argumentator, though presupposes and or presumes that now exists, suddenly gets to the beginning, that is B, puts one there in that position of B, which is at infinity with respect to now, and sees now or n with the lens or frame of B or beginning that is at infinity. So here is a problem. The problem is that when supposing that now or n exists and that B or beginning is at infinity, one is wrong or not justified in reaching the position of B or beginning and putting one in that frame of beginning at infinity. This is because when one assumes that now exists, one is supposing, though not explicitly, and though is not conscious about the assumption explicitly, one is framing itself or putting itself in the position or as an event in the position or as an state in the position that is finitely separated from the event called or state called now or n. Also, when one places B or beginning at infinity, that means B is non-existent with respect to the position one is in, or the position one assumes, with respect to now. Therefore, it is impossible for one to reach the event B or beginning and place oneself at B, and therefore in doing so one places oneself at finitude with respect to the beginning, and therefore, and because now is at infinity with respect to B, one has placed oneself at infinity with respect to the event called now, and so the event called now is at infinity with respect to oneself or one's position, and therefore now does not exist and is unattainable or unreachable and seems unattainable or unreachable. Now, if event or state now slash n is equal to the event or state called the observer slash O, that is, if n is equals to O, then O and n cannot be separated because they are one and are the same. So observer cannot put itself at B which is at infinity with respect to n, because B is at infinity with respect to O, or the observer. So in the argument, in the sudden placing or positioning of itself, of oneself, by the author of the argument at B presents absurdity. How can an observer, given the premise that observer is now or O equals n, and B at infinity with respect to n and O, place O at finitude with respect to B, provided the premise and the definition or definitions are assumed or taken to be true? This is not possible. But even if O is not equal to n, in presuming that now or n exists, and assuming that B is at infinity with respect to now, one admits that B does not exist with respect to n. And because one has assumed that now exists with respect to itself, or say the observer or the author, then that means that one positions oneself at finitude with respect to now or n, and therefore at infinity with respect to B, or the beginning, and therefore also assumes that B does not exist with respect to oneself, or itself, or the author self, or the observer self. So now this sudden positioning or placing of oneself, or of observer's frame, or of observation point at B cannot be done. But even if it is done, then it is obvious that now or n does not seem to exist, or seems to exist at infinity with respect to the observer, or oneself, as it is at infinity with respect to point or event B, or the beginning. And so this negates the previous assumption that now exists with respect to the observer. Though this negation of existence of now, there is this apparent or appearance of existence of now. And this is because the observer or the author hasn't let go of the truth/existence of now, as the observer positions oneself at B or at finitude with respect to B. So one still realizes, though implicitly and not consciously, that now exists and it cannot not exist. This may be because one or the observer still identifies self with the now/n, as existence of n is quote-unquote obvious to the self/observer/O. Also, even though this identification with n may or may not be obvious, if n, that is now, exists or is assumed to exist, then one cannot position self at B or at finitude with respect to B, which is at infinity with respect to n. This is because by the very definition that B is at infinity with respect to n, and that n exists, means that B is at infinity with respect to the observer/self, and B does not exist. But if the observer positions self at finitude with respect to B, then B exists, and n, since it's at infinity with respect to B, is at infinity with respect to the observer now. We could say that now has changed, or that n is no more now, provided observer identifies self with now. So now n is not now, and n does not exist. But if we still cling to defining n as now, then now or n ceases to exist, as we place self at finitude with respect to B, which is at infinity with respect to n/now. Also B then exists. So either n exists or B exists with respect to the observer/O, depending on which among n or B is at finitude with respect to O, provided n and B are infinitely separated. So this absurdity or sense of or feeling of absurdity arises when thought or realized of the non-existence of n/now, because as we see it, now cannot not exist, as it is the case from the experience of reality. So one does not shake off the sense of existence of now. So one comes to the conclusion that B does not exist. But not just that, they also make a mistake in thinking and concluding that this infinite, call it regression or event/states, all the way back does not exist. So one does not shake off the sense of existence of now. So one comes to conclusion that B does not exist. But that's no problem. Just assume and accept the existence of now as truth. That means one should restrain oneself from placing or tending to place oneself at B at infinity. This is because B is at infinity and therefore non-existent. So how can one be at or place itself somewhere that is nowhere? That is, at somewhere that does not exist with respect to oneself. That is, how can one be at that what's not? But even if one does, then one should accept that n/now does not exist, as n is at infinity with respect to the one. It cannot be both. A switch cannot be at both states of quote-unquote on and quote-unquote off, classically speaking. Actually, and to be more precise, quote-unquote, observationally speaking. So now, accepting that now exists, one should accept and does accept that B does not exist as it is at infinity with respect to the self and now. So now/n exists and the beginning/B does not exist. Now we can see that there is this jump or conclusion made in the argument that the series of events/states all the way back to infinity does not exist. Now we see that there is this jump or conclusion made in the argument that the infinite series of events/states all the way back to infinity does not and cannot exist. But the thing is that B/beginning is at infinity means B/beginning does not exist. It does not mean that the events/states cannot go on forever. So there is this mistake one makes when thinking of or dealing with infinity, taking the position that now/n exists and the beginning/b does not exist. We move further. The infinite separation between n and b also implies that there is no connection between n and b and refutes the connection between n and b. So there is no connection between now and beginning. So in the argument made for the existence of beginning, one presumes that there must be connection between n and b. One presumes that there is a beginning for every event and that there is a beginning/b for every now/n. The presumption may be inherent in the argument. The reason one assumes the connection between n and b, though not consciously or explicitly, is that one presumes, though not consciously, that there is beginning for every event or for every now. And no connection or infinite separation simply violates this presumption. No connection or infinite separation simply means no beginning. So with the presumption that there must be a beginning/b to every now/n, one proves or tries to prove the argument for the existence of beginning. Isn't that circular argument or circular reasoning? Now remember the counting from earlier in the video/audio. No matter how much one counts, it has always counted finitely. This can be said differently. No matter how great a number one thinks, it is always a number. It is always something, or quote-unquote something. No matter how great a number one conceives of, one can always add a finite number to make it a greater number, and this can be done for any great number, that is without conceiving of the greatest number, that is without reaching the greatest number, that is without an end, that is without existing in the end or without existence of end, that is with end at infinity. In other words, there is no greatest number or quote-unquote greatest number. Greatest number does not exist. This can be done without reaching infinity as that is what infinity is: unreachable, unattainable, unapproachable, unexperienceable, nothing. And this, that is counting or adding a number to any great number to make it even greater, as argued earlier, can principally, or in ideas at least, be done forever, that is without an end, that is without existence of end, that is without end, infinity, or with end at infinity. So this is what infinity actually is about. This is what it defines. What infinity means is that there is always a number that exists between any number, say c or n, and infinity. Or we can also put it this way: what infinity means is that there is always a number that exists between any number, say c, which is at finitude with respect to any number n, and infinity. This also means that one can never get to infinity. That is, any number is not any close to infinity, no matter how great the number. Even the notation of closeness or separation, which again are another names for numbers or idea of numbers, that is, the idea of number cannot get to / approach / become infinity. And this can be understood by saying that infinity is not a number, it is beyond numbers. It is not anything. It is nothing. And there are mistakes one makes when thinking of or dealing with nothing. Now one can make the case that even in case of numbers, one cannot get from one number to another. So does that mean that numbers don't exist? Or that only one number from which we began moving towards the next exists? So the answer for this is, the thing is, for that to be true, one should bring in infinitesimal, which is nothing but bringing in infinity, and that does not exist. So what exists? To say there is infinity or that infinity exists is to say that the greatest number exists and that it is infinity or it is at infinity. In other words, it means that it does not exist, which means it is to say that it is always the case that no matter how great the number, and given that it is a number, adding another number to that number will not result in that number itself, except for 0 though. This claim can be falsified if we find out such number, that is, if we find out infinity. Finding out infinity, in other words, means experiencing infinity as a number. But since infinity is a non-number or not a number, that is impossible. But it will be possible if we find infinity and or infinity as a number. The claim that is impossible is therefore falsifiable. But is it realizable? Does the claim that there is no greatest number exist? It should be understood that when we say something is at infinity, it means it is nowhere, it does not exist. Infinity as something or as realization or experience or something that can be experienced does not exist. What I mean here by infinity cannot be realized / experienced is that infinity cannot be reached. For example, we cannot walk and reach a point / position in space that is at infinity or that does not exist or does not exist in that space / universe. Or for example, we cannot count all the numbers starting from 0 through 1, 2, 3 and so on, provided that we cannot. There can be other examples too. Yes, infinity cannot be experienced in that sense, but yes, it can be experienced as its non-experience, or as this experience of its non-experience. So this inexperience of non-experience, that is of infinity, can be experienced and is experienced. So the fact that it, that is infinity, is not realized or cannot be realized / experienced is realized / experienced. Consider the claim about there being no greatest number. To say or claim there is no greatest number or that the greatest number is at infinity / is infinity, or to say / claim that there is a number greater than any realized number, that is, for any given number there is a number greater than that number, this is a realized claim. Now consider the term quote-unquote forever, or to say that there is always a number greater than any realized number, that is, for any given number there is always a number greater than that number. This, however, is not a realized claim. This claim cannot be realized if it defines and identifies quote-unquote always or quote-unquote forever as infinity. For this claim to be realized, one should have searched and realized the entirety of everywhere and found no greatest number. So one should have never found the greatest number, and that involves everywhere or terms like quote-unquote forever. Everywhere defines here every possible state of being in that space of being. Space of being is just a space of all possible states of being. Infinity defines the non-existence of the greatest number. It is the greatest number and it does not exist. In other words, it, that is, greatest number / infinity, exists at infinity, is infinity. Greatest number is beyond the space of numbers and therefore does not exist in the space of numbers and for that space of numbers and/or for the numbers which are just the elements of that space of numbers. So greatest number is not a number. So there is no greatest number for such space. The greatest number isn't / is non-existent. The greatest number is nothing. That is not a thing for the numbers. A thing being a number for this space. No matter how many numbers one conceives of or how great a number one thinks of or counts up to, that always defines finitude, that is, a number or a point or element of the number space. Greatest number cannot be defined, and or it cannot be defined in that space of numbers. It is no definition in that space. It has no definition, no existence. Now, provided that infinity is immeasurable or inexperienceable, provided that this statement is true, the claim that there is no greatest number or no infinity or that greatest number is at infinity is realized. Consider a statement that states quote-unquote no matter what the number is, if another number is added to it, it can or may give a greater number. And it will certainly yield a greater number if at least one of the numbers added is positive number and not equal to 0. And of course, provided that definitions holds. This statement can be realized and is realized. So b/beginning is at infinity means that there is always an event that exists between any event c which is at infinity with respect to now/n and event called beginning/b which is at infinity. Any event that is or that we define as now/n now will no more be defined as now/n as some other event will be defined as now/n. So the now event will say change. But anyway, if there is always an event, that is, if an event is always found between now/n and b, as the now event changes, then the beginning/boundary is never realized. The claim that there is beginning/b will be realized only when we reach the beginning and there is no separation between now/n and beginning/b and no event between n and b. That is, this claim will be true only if we realize the beginning/boundary. The claim that there is beginning isn't realized and does not become true until and unless the beginning/event b materializes or is experienced. That is, until and unless event b becomes is. That is, until and unless event called beginning exists/becomes existent. But until then, the claim that there is no beginning is the claim that is realized and is true/is existent. Therefore, the claim that there is beginning isn't true until it is realized. Therefore, the claim that there is no beginning is the one that's true and is the one that's realized. With the realization/materialization of the claim that there is beginning, the claim that there is no beginning ceases to be true or realized/experienced. Similarly, with the realization/materialization of the claim that there is no beginning, the claim that there is beginning or that the beginning is ceases to be true or ceases to be realized/experienced. So, with the realization/materialization of the claim that there is no beginning, the claim that there is beginning or that the beginning is not true/is false. Thank you.